talk about several different things. So I think it depends on you. So why don't you tell something about yourselves? So I know who I'm talking
Сразу
to.
вопрос, о чем вы хотите, чтобы Ллойд вам сказал? Давайте начнем сначала, потому что да, я говорю, что область для некоторых из вас вообще в принципе непонятная, неизвестная просто.
I can talk about startup
about
yard.
business angels, about startup ideas, about
Sure, I can do that, but it might not be meaningful if I don't know who I'm talking to. So can we just hear from you? Let's say if you're studying, what are you studying? If not, what kind of business do you do?
Так, если вы учитесь, что вы изучаете, если вы работаете, что вы делаете?
Yeah.
Чтобы было понятно, на чем.
Я архитектор.
Architecture, radio.
Moderator?
Radio, как-то вместе.
Together.
Radio together, for Russian people.
Okay.
This one. Then credit cards.
Credit?
Pedagogy.
Teacher.
Teacher.
Запасные части.
Auto parts.
Auto parts.
Okay.
Yeah. Вы что делаете? Teacher.
Real estate business.
Real estate. Hotels and weddings and events.
And who's students here?
Коля. Давай студент.
Я
студент. Ты тоже студент.
Я Алекс.
Алекс сейчас. Коля, insurance and Iliana is marketing.
Online marketing.
She's from economic university. Что ты там изучаешь? Вадим is student.
Also student and marketing communication.
Studying marketing and communications, okay.
Коль, ты что изучал?
Business administration.
Business administration.
Okay. Good. So
Вот
the first thing,
я обещал, что студенты будут.
the first thing that I learned about marketing and communications is everyone who studies marketing and communications doesn't work in marketing and communications.
Все, что вы изучаете, забудьте, ничего не работает.
And everyone who works in marketing and communications didn't study marketing and communications.
Все, что вы там изучали.
So you'll find something, I'm sure, it will help you. I think that's because studying marketing and communications doesn't really give you any experience in what that actually means. Whereas people who do study it find that gives them experience in a lot of things other than marketing and communications. So in some ways it's for people who should have studied something else.
Маркетинг, communication, бизнес, вы не переживайте, потому что все равно ничего не надо.
Он же говорит, что те, кто работает в маркетинге и
Я коротко,
коммуникации,
в двух словах нормально.
он...
So I studied music theory, musicology, and English language at University of California. So I suppose that's a good experience for working in marketing and communications. But now I work for Startup Yard. So before we start, let's go to the very basics. So what is a startup? I think people talk about startups all the time, right? Oh, startups, it's a big industry, it's interesting, lots of young people are into it, it's making lots of money, right? $50 billion for Uber, $500 billion for Google, right? Facebook, $400 billion, but what is...
Google, Facebook на деньги дают, им дают.
But what is a startup really? So does somebody have a definition for me of what is a startup?
It's most technology, IT company that will change really...
Речь обычно идет об IT-компаниях, которые...
It's getting close. We'll change something. Okay, so we got change something, we got technology and IT.
Обычно это касается...
Improving something. Okay, but how is that different from a normal business?
Because it still changes. It's really flexible.
Normal businesses change, right? If I open a restaurant, right, then I need to, see what my customers want. I see what they buy. If they buy a particular thing, then I need to go in that direction, right? I need to study the market so that I still change, I still improve things, right? So it's not the definition. In a kitchen, I use technology, right? Or I might use new computer technology in a restaurant. But it's not a startup, is it?
Maybe it's a plan of business.
A business plan?
Стартап может быть бизнес-планом. Что вы имеете в виду?
What I will do, what will be my steps
Okay.
to open this business.
Мои шаги, чтобы открыть...
Okay, so does that mean I can make a restaurant into a startup with a different business plan?
То есть, получается, стартапом может быть ресторан?
Yes.
Можно
Maybe,
написать
okay.
бизнес-план?
So it has to do with the business plan. Okay, I think we're getting close. We're getting something.
Something new, something unique.
Something new, something unique. Okay.
Well, close to it.
Okay. Something new. I sort of agree. It is about something new, but it's not necessarily about something unique, right?
Yeah.
Well, let's think about the biggest startups over the last 20 years, right? So Google. Do they do anything unique?
Google вот уникален.
What do they do that's unique?
Что они сделали уникального?
Yahoo was before, yes.
Huh?
Yahoo was before.
Right. They don't do search. Search is not unique.
It's PPC company.
Not unique.
No?
То есть
Not
получается, Google он не уникален в том, что он придумал.
Someone else invented that. Someone else invented email. Someone else invented YouTube. It was another company.
Facebook и стартап?
Facebook's not unique.
Это не уникально.
So in 2002, was what? 2004, a venture capital investor said when what's his name? The first angel investor for Facebook gave $500,000 investment to Facebook. He said Thiel, right? He's Peter Thiel. They said, "Oh, you're crazy, right? That market is already full of what? MySpace, right? So they said 400 people are on MySpace. Facebook will fail, right?
А слышал о Юбаю?
What do you think?
I don't know. Yeah, of course, then there's Contactia, right? And people probably said, oh, Facebook already has that market, right? But Contactia has some hundreds of millions of people, right? So it's not about being unique. So what is it really about?
About improvement.
Improvement? Okay, but Sony improves things, Samsung improves things, Apple is very innovative, right? These are innovative companies. Tesla, nobody calls that a startup, right? So what is it really about? When you look at two companies, let's take a company like everyone knows Uber. You know Uber?
Uber.
Yeah.
Uber. It's a company which connects people. It's like Airbnb, but for taxis. Connects people with drivers, right?
Uber. I use blah blah.
Blah blah car, same. It's similar, right? But it's okay. It's not the point. The point is, here you have two companies. Let's take Tesla and Uber, right? Current market cap of Uber is $50 billion, right? Which is about the same as Tesla. So who innovates more, Tesla or Uber? Tesla, right? Tesla innovates more, right? They sell new cars, they create new technology, they're changing the way that we use energy, the way that we use batteries, but it's not a startup, right? Uber, are they really changing much, right? Technology? The technology doesn't do that much, right? It's about the way people behave. So we can't say that it's really a technology innovation, right? It's using technology in a new way. So I'll give you a definition that I have for startups. Okay, and it's not about technology, it's not about size, it's not about speed. Okay, it's about something very specific. So a startup is a company which will fail if it doesn't grow. That's it. Right? So a traditional company.
Стартап получается то, что у вас, в общем-то, проколется, если не сработает.
Или нет? Проколется, если не будет расти.
Если будет расти, быстро расти.
So here's the difference, right? If you have a traditional company, let's say you have a restaurant, right? And you have 100 chairs in your restaurant, and on the weekends, those 100 chairs are full, right? And on Mondays, 50%, Tuesdays 50%, right? Now let's say for 6 months or for a year, the economy is not doing very well, so you only have 80 seats filled. And during the week you only have 40, right? Does your restaurant necessarily fail? No, right? But if you're Facebook, right? And today 1.2 billion people are using your platform, but tomorrow only 1 billion people use it. Right? You're failing. The reason is, and this is true of Facebook, it's true of Uber, it's true of Google, right? It's true of real startups, that the value of the product that they're providing to people is based on growth. It's based on more people using it, right? So if every day when you're typing in your searches in Google and you're clicking on ads, right? And you're using all their services, you're making their services stronger at the same time. You're giving them information about you as a consumer, right? You're providing content for them. If for one day, even for 1 hour, everyone in the world stopped using Google, the quality of the product that Google provides you would drop, right? It would become less useful. So the fact that people use it, the fact that it continues to grow, the amount of information that it provides, the amount of connections that it provides, causes it to become more valuable. So that's what a startup really is.
Всех этих Google и прочих моментах в том, что вы им пользуетесь. Каждый день пользуетесь, создаете им контент, и в общем они свою суть исполняют и растут таким образом.
So I work a lot with startups. I'm a stakeholder in 17 startups, either as an investor or as a member of Startup Yard. And one of the most common things, one of the most common things that we see is a technology company, an IT company, who thinks that they are a startup, but they're not, right? They think because it's technology, they have to be a startup.
Он столкнулся с тем, что в основном технологические компании, высоких технологий, считают, что они стартапы. На самом деле,
yeah. But the real problem is that they don't have a product which improves in value the more people use it.
А у них нет такого продукта, который бы давал возможность большему количеству людей этим воспользоваться.
Now this is a really common problem. What happens, I'll give you an example. We had a company which was doing personal finance, right? So they had an app which allowed you to track all the money you're spending, you know, and figure out what your monthly budget is and figure out how to improve it. That's fine, right? It's a nice idea, and people were using it. Almost 1 million people were using it. Here's where the problem comes in. How was the company using the growth of the product, the growth of the number of users, to improve the product? And in this case, they weren't doing that.
Например, вот вы хотите заняться персональным консультированием в бизнесе, да, финансах, да, вы в принципе уже все забили, кого будете, как использовать и так далее. Теперь вопрос, что вы сделаете для того, чтобы это расширить как можно большему количеству?
So if for a single day, right, on one particular day, if half of the people who normally use the app used it, the experience would be better. It would be faster, the server would respond faster, right? The customer care would be better. If 10 times the number of people use the app on a single day, it would be worse. It would work less well, right? There would be less customer service, there would be less value. So we really encourage startups, real startups, to find a way when people start using their apps, when people start using their products, to use those extra people to add value to their ecosystem. So the most common ways. So the most common ways startups do that. I think you can probably name some ways that startups are doing this. So how do you make your products more valuable as more people use them?
Because the more students have, the more films they produce.
Yeah.
So I can show more results and
Good.
involve more people, more celebrities to make a workshop and so on and so on.
Good, so you're getting to it. So what that is I'll just write it here. Data, right? Content, information, right? So startups leverage data, content, information using analytics to improve the way that their services work, the more information they have.
То есть первое главное, чтобы у вас была информация, что-то, что нужно было бы другим людям, что вы использовали бы, да, в этом случае.
Right? So the theory is that as a network, let's say as the internet in general gets bigger, it should become more valuable over time. Right? Every part of it should become more valuable, more easy to search, more full of good information, right? And every service on the internet should have the same dynamic. The more people who use it, the better it becomes. If a service degrades as more people use it, right, then ultimately on the internet it's doomed, right? Because the internet constantly grows. The information constantly grows, the ability to search constantly grows, so the ability to leverage data constantly grows, right? So real startups leverage data, and they use analytics to understand people and to improve their products. So that's really a definition for me of what a startup is. Everyone get that? Question?
What do you think about analytics? What do you mean when you speak analyze the data?
Sure. So it's this is just about taking information that you have and finding ways to add value to that, finding ways to bring value from it.
То есть информация, которая у тебя есть, обрабатывать, ты пытаешься из нее вытащить, что это был, как бы ты был бы весом.
Can we say some example?
There's a million examples. Everyone here uses Google products of some kind, right?
Google продукты,
Yeah.
знаете, какие?
So when you're searching on Google, you're not aware of this, but when you search something on Google, Google has an enormous amount of data about you, right? An enormous amount of data about where you live, where you go, what you do, what you're interested in. And when you put in search terms in a Google search, it uses all of that information, and it uses complex algorithms to give you an answer to your question which is relevant to you, right? So when you particularly sit down at a computer and Google knows that it's you, somehow you logged in or you use something which indicates it's you, Google will give you information which it knows to be relevant to you. It will show you results which it shows no one else. So I'll give you a perfect example of this. I live in Prague. I sit down at my computer and I type startups, right? And I am much more likely to see information relevant to the Czech Republic, relevant to Startup Yard, relevant to my particular field, right? It will show me things that it knows are interesting to me, right? And it does that for everyone in the world. That's just one example. Facebook is another, right? When you go on Facebook and you look at your newsfeed, right? What are you seeing?
Horrible.
Okay, maybe too much, right? But you're seeing things that Facebook thinks you want, right?
But it's so good.
Maybe. So let me ask you: Have you ever seen a friend's engagement photos or a baby, a birth or a birthday, and you responded to that?
Yeah, sure. But when I see that they like something that really like,
sure, there's bad information,
you know,
but then there's also good information. If someone that you haven't talked to in 10 years gets engaged and puts a picture on Facebook, or has a baby and puts a picture on Facebook,
course, it's great.
then you'll see that, right? It's great. Well, there is no way to do that other than using analytics, right? There's a lot of data, and they find a way to isolate the data that is relevant to you and to show it to you when it's relevant to show. So this is what analytics is about, right? This is increasing the value of data.
Но это благодаря Google продуктам. Они благодаря за счет других продуктов уже информацию о тебе изучили, ее и сохранили, проанализировали.
Question?
Yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible.
It's terrible? It's an opinion. Why is it terrible?
Смешно вам, потому что вы умеете
Почему
говорить
ужасно?
по-английски,
Почему
а
ужасно?
нет.
Я имею в виду, что это же может быть какая-то...
Yeah.
Вдруг мне в данный момент
Google you know about you everything. It's terrible.
Sure, Google knows. I agree with you. It can be dangerous, right?
Yeah.
Google knows everything. Maybe no particular person at Google knows anything about you or cares anything about you, right? But yeah, Google knows about you. But on the other hand, when you sit down and log into Facebook, right? You look at that information. You use that information.
Ну, в принципе, ты же тоже как бы с другой стороны этим используешь. Ты же пользуешься этой информацией, которую тебе эти Facebook выдаст.
So in a sense, for good.
Что там могут быть погрешности, мне кажется, я говорю, потому что с одной стороны они знают, как имеют
Google
знают какую-то информацию обо мне, но в этот момент у меня другая.
Google может ошибаться. Google может ошибаться.
Конечно, Google может ошибаться, потому что у меня, например, в телефоне, у меня телефон зарегистрирован на русский язык. Я когда что-то ищу, мне нужно чешское, он мне выдает русские скорее сайты. Если я зайду со своего ноутбука, который у меня чешский, и если я ищу какую-то информацию, мне покажет мои чешские.
Ну, то есть мой вопрос заключался в том, что если он знает обо мне информацию, которая была, например, в прошлом, а в настоящем у меня уже другой запрос возник, да, даже несмотря на то, что там было.
When the information and data change, Google change it too, yeah, about the person.
Sure, as much as they can. Yeah.
Да, но Google настолько
But this is of course there are problems, right? There are problems with big data. There's problems with government surveillance. Right, government control. There's problems with privacy. There's problems with these data, with these algorithms being used incorrectly, or in your case, showing you things you don't want to see, right? So I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying it's like it's the best thing in the world or it's the only thing. But this is what startups do. This is what startups are about ultimately. So ultimately, the idea is to provide the most value for you, right? To use all the information we can
То есть сделать все,
to
чтобы
give
эта
you the best
информация была
value.
наиболее для вас нужная, наиболее обработанная, наиболее вам полезная.
But it's not just about your personal information. It can be,
Это не только
it can
ваша
be about
персональная
anything,
информация,
right?
это может быть все что угодно. Полет на Марс в вашем конкретном случае, например.
So do you want to hear a little bit about what Startup Yard does?
Так, стартап Ярд чем занимается? Вот я бизнес-ангел.
Yeah, business angels. Well, we're not angels, right?
Не, они не ангелы, конечно.
We're not business angels, right? Well, I have made angel investments before. Some of my colleagues have made investments before, but that's not what we do at Startup Yard.
Но это не то, что они, не совсем то, что они делают в стартап Ярде.
Okay, so
И вот
we're
эти площадки, как HubFi, да, вот их тут
Can I put it here? It's kind of low for me. Sorry. Hey. So we're an accelerator. This doesn't work, I think.
У них акселераторская площадка.
Forgive my spelling. I'm very bad spelling. I think that's wrong. Right?
А, вот красная пишет.
So we're a startup accelerator, right? So does anyone have an idea of what that means?
Они акселераторская площадка. Вы примерно понимаете, что это такое или нет? Не понимаете?
Mentoring, helping, financing. Yeah, it's kind of like that's what it is. But what's the general idea, right?
To help startup to grow.
To help startups to grow, right?
Главная идея
To make startups grow faster, right?
Показать,
So
в каком направлении работать и быстрее работать.
one of the main problems with starting a startup, I was telling you before, that startups die when they don't grow, right? So accelerators are a kind of a solution for this problem. Thank you. Okay. So accelerators are a solution for this problem. They're a way of allowing startups to grow fast enough to get investment and survive, right? Why do startups need investment? Why do startups need investment?
Почему стартапам вообще нужны
Because they don't
инвестиции?
get money enough in the beginning.
In the beginning,
Потому что в самом начале
So
у них нет
it's
денег
a
на это.
peculiar thing about the technology business, but about startups in general, right? That they're not profitable for a very long time, right? So it's actually a bit like the restaurant business, right? 3 to 4 years, startups can expect not to make any money. And part of the reason for this is data, right? When you start a startup, you have no data, right? And as you grow, the idea is you get better at using the data you have and getting more data to find some way of providing value, something that someone will pay for, right?
То есть практически вы пробуете поставить информацию, должны найти того, кто вам заплатит за то, что вы эту информацию платите.
Problems like if you want to build a lookalike audience, you need enough data.
Exactly.
And over 1,000 clients as minimum, and to bring this 1,000 clients, you have to spend crazy money.
Yeah. Or imagine if you're a startup doing, for example, personal finance or search or a social network, right? You don't need 1,000 clients. You need 1 million or 10 million, right? So it takes a lot of money, right? So if you imagine a company like Facebook, many people don't realize this. How much money do you think it took Facebook to get their first 1 million users?
Как вы думаете, Facebook сколько вложил денег для того, чтобы получить первый свой миллион пользователей?
1 million.
100 million.
It wasn't 100 million. It was more like 10. It was more like $10 million. That's $10 per person. If you walk down the street and you handed $10 bills to people to sign up for Facebook, right? That would have worked just as well as what Facebook did. Right, so I'll give you an example of this. Airbnb, right? Everyone knows Airbnb? So, does anyone know how they started Airbnb? It's quite interesting. No? So it started at a tech conference, and the idea was that the hotels cost too much, and they wanted to share flats near the tech conference. So they started doing this at different tech conferences, right? Then they realized, when they looked at the spreadsheets and they looked at the business plan, that the biggest problem was data, again. In this case, it was the number of flats that were listed, the number of people on the platform, that's all data. And they figured out that it doesn't provide any value to people if they search and there's no flats listed where they're going, right? Obviously. But it would cost, they know it would cost $10 or $20 or $30 per person on Google, advertising on Facebook, just to grow the platform. So what did they do? Maybe you don't know this story. The founders went to big cities, Boston, San Francisco, New York, Philadelphia, Los Angeles. They went door to door, right? Down the street. Knock, 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 knock. Hello, we're from Airbnb. Can we sign you up for this service, right? And we'll give you $50, right? That's what they did. So yeah, this is not, we talk about startups using technology, right? Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they do things really old-fashioned way, right? So it's not necessarily about the technology, but it is about the data, right? It is about getting more data, constantly growing in some way, right? So an accelerator basically helps startups to find a way. Baby or cat? Baby. I have a son. He's 14 months. So he's my startup, right?
He's growing.
Yeah, he's getting some benefits too. That's good. Startups like babies. So an accelerator helps startups to find ways to use data. The biggest problem that we have with startups coming in, there are two problems. The first one is that they don't have an idea of how to use data and how to get more data. Okay, the second idea really is the reason for existence, right? And this is the problem that they're solving, right? So I would say of the most common problems, this is the biggest for startups. They don't know how to talk about the problem that they're solving for people, right? So this happens all the time. Someone creates an interesting technology like messaging or something with video or a game or whatever it is, and they don't know how to talk about the problem that they're solving for people, right? And if you think about it, all products that you pay for, right? They solve some problem that you have, right? They solve some issue in your life which would be worse without that product. You don't buy anything unless you're missing something. And that includes new things, right? So everyone has a smartphone, right? Right? So what's your favorite app that you use?
Вот какая вот такое application, да, которое часть приложений, которые используют чаще всего?
Instagram. Instagram, WhatsApp, someone else? Levnejší taxi, that's a good one.
Liftago.
Which one?
Liftago.
Liftago, okay. Anything else? Which one?
WhatsApp.
Viber, WhatsApp. Okay, so we've got messaging, social media, right, pictures. So why do you use Instagram?
Почему вы используете вот эти приложения? Да, например, Инстаграм, зачем вам?
Enthusiasm.
So here's a better question. If you didn't use Instagram, right, what would you miss?
Хорошо, если у вас не будет этих приложений, Инстаграм, WhatsApp, Facebook и так далее, что вы потеряете?
You have no problem, okay.
Почему я прослушала? Да ничего вы... А что не... Вот у меня тоже украли iPhone, ничего не теряю вообще.
So maybe a better example is Liftago, right? If you didn't use Liftago, what would you miss?
Liftago вот использует такси-служба, одна из такси-служб.
Good offer.
Вот, например, если
good prices for taxis.
что
What
вы
else?
потеряли? Получается, цену хорошую потеряли такси.
To avoid using this app allows me to avoid communication
Right.
with taxi service, looking around,
finding out.
So convenience.
Just one
общение.
So inconvenience, avoiding fraud, right? Avoiding taxi drivers stealing from you, avoiding miscommunication, right? Avoiding having to just call someone on the street, right? So these are all pain points. They're all points of pain that we have in our lives, which these applications solve, right? So what do we focus on with startups? What we focus on with startups is finding the real problem that they're solving, right? The most important problem. And this is a big issue. One of the hardest things for startups to do is to really identify what that problem is, right? So very often a startup comes in. And they say, oh, we have this great idea, and it's this application that does all these things, right? Because my friend Michal said do this, and my friend Tomasz said he wanted that, and my friend Alena said she wanted that. So we put them all together, and it's something for everyone, right? It's something amazing. But everyone has used applications like this. You open it up and you say, what is this? Right? So one of the hardest things for startups to do is to identify what the problem is and how to communicate that problem, right? So that when you say, oh, I hate calling taxis, someone can say, oh, Najlevniejszy taxi helps you with that problem, right? So startups are ultimately about solving problems, right? This is true of all businesses, but we think of problems first with startups.
В принципе, все бизнесы основываются на том, что чего-то не хватает. Есть какая-то проблема, которую может с этим бизнесом решить. А стартап особенно решает.
You work in real estate, right? Someone?
Например, вот
right?
что касается продажи.
So what's the problem that you solve for your customers?
Какая проблема, например, которую вот они решают в недвижимости?
Roof under your hair.
Right.
Вот высоту потолка решают.
Let's put it in a negative way. If your customers didn't have you, what would happen?
Вот, например, если не будет у покупателя вот такого представителя продаж недвижимости, какие проблемы они приобретут? Проблема была бы с договорами.
Yeah.
С ценой тоже.
So this is a perfect example of what happens with communication with startups. Is that we go, well, what's the problem? And they say, well, you know, I'm in real estate and people need houses. And it's like, yes, people do need houses, but they don't have to come to you.
Mm-hmm.
So the problem that you solve is not that people need houses. People were building houses before real estate agents, right? But they were having problems with those houses. The problems with the contracts, problems with the price, problems with the legal issues, right? So this is the problem that you're solving. So startups like to think of themselves as solving big problems, right? You would say, what problem does Google solve? Oh, they allow you to search the internet. That's not the problem that they solve, right? People were doing that first. They allow you to access information that is relevant to you, right? And on the other side, they allow advertisers to access the right one. So that's the problem that they solve. So I can tell you a little bit about our program. We spend 3 months with startups. Every 9 months, we have a group of between 7 and 10 startups. Every year, 300 startups, more or less, apply to our program.
То есть они на 3 месяца тратят на поддержку того или иного стартапа, который они выбирают. Каждый месяц, собственно, этот выбор идет. Да? То есть они порядка 300 стартапов рассматривают в год.
So the way our program works, we give them 30,000 euros, and we work with them for 3 months. Startups in our program meet up to 100 mentors. They do 20 to 25 workshops with us on different fields. Yeah. And then they present their products in a sort of demo day, right? Where they figured out the marketing angles, they figured out the position of the product, they figured out what data they're going to use and what problem they're going to solve. And then they go out and they give a presentation. And what do we look for with successful startups? Many people think that startups are unique or new, right, or exciting. The thing that I love about the best startups, right? The best startups are boring. Right? They're so boring that when you hear the idea from the presentation, you think, I heard that before, right? I think I know about this already, right? So that's when I know I'm hearing a really good idea, right? Because it bores me. The presentation is so obvious. Everything about it is so obvious that I think, yeah, of course, right? That's the best kind of idea, right? Uber, Airbnb, Skype, right? Spotify, these are obvious ideas. And yet someone figured out exactly how to use data to grow, right? To provide that service at a large scale, at a global scale.
Но опять же, в принципе, если у вас есть опять же какая-то уникальная информация, как уникально вы можете обработать, то вполне можно.
So startups are not about new ideas. They're not about exciting ideas. Not for me. They're about obvious ideas. But they're about making obvious ideas accessible to more and more people around the world, right? So So if you're thinking about working with a startup, right, keep this in mind. It's not about new, it's not about exciting, it's not about sexy software and amazing visual things. It's about an obvious idea that should already exist, right? It should already exist, but it doesn't, right? That's the best kind of startup. Yeah. So that's my talk about startups. Can I have some questions or
Как
Yeah.
к ним обратиться и это должно
You have
быть
this
в
card.
языке?
I think I might have forgotten actually.
Стартап Ярд в интернете задай его, в Google, рано тебе выдаст сразу.
Ну, контакты.
А конкретно
Общаться.
I forgot my cards. I'll write my.
Тут тоже вышел.
It's okay. I'll write our website and my email.
You have it here.
There's my name, Startup Yard.
.com.
CZ works as well.
CZ.
Okay, this is me, Lloyd. Zalinach.
Startup.com.
Startup Yard. Yeah. So any questions about that or about Startup Yard or accelerators in general or investment, whatever you want. I'm not sure what you want to hear.
По поводу там инвестиций, идей, да.
Please.
Do you have such well, film school? Is that possible to apply?
A film school?
Yeah.
So think of it this way.
Вот киношкола, как можно, например,
Because of our particular set of mentors, our particular team, right? We accept technology projects first of all, web-based products, and usually around data, mobile, analytics applications. So products which people can use around the world, right? Scalable products. So generally, if something's like a educational product or a product based around content, like videos or things like this, probably we wouldn't. Because we're looking for companies which can grow very quickly.
То есть им нужны идеи, которые будут распространяться.
Лично проконсультироваться.
If, for example, person would like to personal consultation about her idea, for example.
Yeah, so we have office hours, or we do personal consultations by appointment. If you have an idea which you'd like some feedback in, we can do that. Everything's for free, obviously.
Все бесплатно, можно прийти, договориться.
Yeah. What we generally do is work with startups that have global technology products which can be sold around the world.
Ну, в принципе, им нужны на самом деле глобальные какие-то технологии, чтобы можно было потом по всему миру продать.
And the way Startup Yard works is we'll take a company which is still not worth anything. We will own 10% of the company. And as they grow, right, our stake in the company should get bigger. So this is our business model, right? We don't charge any money or take any money from startups. And we also don't take any money from any other companies. It's solely investment, nothing else. Yeah. There was another question.
What is your biggest success in Startup Yard?
So, do you know Damiidlo?
Последняя вот такая идея.
Damiidlo, that's one.
Последний такой.
So Damiidlo was in Startup Yard Accelerator in 2012. They were bought by Tomáš Čupar, who also owns Slevomat. And he bought it, and then he last year sold it to a German company called Delivery Hero for about 4 million euros. Last summer.
Кому он продал? Идло или
Сливомат?
Сливомат продал. Ну, неважно, в общем, продал немцам Сливомат за 4 сколько?
Something like 100 million crowns. He sold it last year, end of 2014. So that's an example of a local success. Over the last 2 years, we've been taking more startups from Central Europe. So we've been around for 4 years. One second. We've been around for 4 years, so we don't expect to have made a profit yet. So it's long term. If you look at the profitable accelerators like Y Combinator, Techstars, these have been around for 10, 12 years already. And they have the biggest successes like Airbnb, right, Dropbox, things like that. So it takes a lot of time to grow that thing. But we have one company, for example, from last year, security company called Tesca Labs.
Вот Tesla, например, это компания.
And they grew from, they incorporated when they were joining our accelerator, and today, 7 months later, they're worth 20 million euros.
Вот, и они, например, как бы в акселераторской
So that's maybe our
площадке
biggest
пообщались,
growth success. But we still haven't made any money from that company, right? We don't make money until they make money, right? Which is money in the bank, not investment money. Right? So the biggest thing with startups, I think, especially with early stage startups, is they think about the value of the company, which is wrong, right? It's absolutely wrong. So companies think, well, my company, I don't want to give you 10% because then my company is worth 300,000 euros, right? And then what if it's worth €1 million a year later, right? Then you have 10% of that, and that's not fair, right? Well, it doesn't really matter. As long as your company is growing in value, that's the only thing that matters. If it grows 10% or 300%, right?
И как бы лучше сразу задуматься о том, как это все вырастет, потому что представьте, если вы получите 10% до 3000 евро или там от 30 миллионов.
Yeah. So a lot of people who join startups, they think that the point is to get investment, right? They see these big companies like Uber, Airbnb, Dropbox, and they think, oh, they got lots of investment, and then they were successful. They weren't successful because of the investment. The investment helped them to grow, right, when they had a good plan for growth.
Цель как раз не получение инвестиций, а то, чтобы расти, а инвестиции это вот промежуточно.
Yeah. So it's, I would say, the most common mistake that young startup people make is they think the investment is success. The investment is not success, and you won't get investment until you have a plan that will work. Another question?
Вот именно поэтому у меня такой вопрос. Наша фирма, кстати, существует в 24 штатах на земном шарике, да? В Чехии, конкретно в Праге, вот только месяц. Могут ли они помочь конкретно в Праге раскрутить? Чем-то помочь?
Они берут то, что раскрутить можно по всему миру. К ним надо пойти на консультацию.
Она раскручена в 24 штатах, как странах? В 24 странах мира раскручена. В Чехии только начинают.
It's with company about credit cards. Я, честно говоря, даже не знаю, как это объяснить правильно. Они собирают кэшбэки.
Cash rewards, yeah.
Cash rewards, yeah. And they have it works in 24 countries, and they try to present it in Czech Republic.
Юбаю, это порядка 3 месяца, 3 недели
назад
онлайн
help about presentation in Czech Republic, but you don't interest in that.
It's not our field, no.
Нет, это не их поле деятельности, они занимаются такими проектами, которые потом идут на весь мир, охватывают. У них технологии еще главное.
And for us, it's about we work with startups that are growing globally, not with global companies that want to come into the Czech market.
А потом с большими компаниями они не работают. Им нужно, чтобы идея, пришла к ним идея, только что свежая, вот прям еще не дали, они сертифицировали.
Спасибо.
Так, если все, мы отпускаем Ллойда, спасибо большое.
Well, ultimately, so the kind of startups we take, it depends mostly, I would say, you should always think of 90% of our decision about startups is based on the team that's working on the idea, not on the idea.
И потом, конечно, очень много базируется на группе людей, которые занимаются.
So the idea can change. The idea will change.
И идея должна поменяться,
but the team will stay the same, right? So a perfect example of this is Google, right? Do you know how Google started?
Очень важный коллектив, который работает над идеей.
Yeah, Brennan Page. And do you know what they were doing?
If there is only one person with one idea without a group?
There has to be two. It has to be at least two.
Два должны быть.
But they started with a thesis project for Stanford University, right? And it was about analyzing data on the internet. That was it, right? It was a project at school, and it wasn't a business at all, right? And that turned into Google today, right? The idea changes. It wasn't about advertising, it wasn't about anything like that. It was just about data. It was just about analyzing information. So we know that the idea will change. So the idea is 10% of what we look at. What we look at 90% is what the team is. Are they ambitious? Are they interested in growing? Are they flexible? Right? Do they listen? Do they have strong opinions? Right? So these are the most important things. Failed ideas, yes.
Most of them.
Most of them.
Больше.
So even in an accelerator, right?
Даже в акселераторах.
In the wild, right? 95% up to maybe 99% of startups fail.
99% прогорает.
Вот так.
You know, but this depends.
And you are still working.
Yeah, but this depends on what we think of, like, you know, what's a startup. If I go to my friend and I say, oh, I have an idea, and then we work on it for a while, but we never make any money and we stop working. That's failure, right?
Потому что, например, вот как у вас есть идея, да, вы с ней работаете, а потом у вас денег не стало, и вы останавливаете, и все, идея пропала.
So, as an example, we're in a global accelerator network, GAN, which is which keeps data on startups in the network, right? So, for example, last year, I think there were something like 7,000 startups in the network. 80% of those startups fail.
Ну вот 7 тысяч, например, проектов они рассмотрели, да, из них 80% просто.
And these are 80% of the best startups in the world.
Это лучшие мира, да, мировые идеи, там все собирают вместе.
Right, and most of them fail within the first 7 months.
Они прогорели в первые 7 месяцев.
So, yeah.
Do you know Eventival?
What?
Eventival.
Eventival? No.
What is it? No, it's a database
Могу ему послать на email любую, которую он не
I don't know.
знает.
Да, посылайте, потому что, может быть, мы еще как-то не произносим, может быть, не очень понятно, а может быть,
something similar, and I think better.
ну посмотрите.
Okay.
Он отвечает на все мои очень быстро.
Sure.
Они как задача такое, все в России
Sure.
But we have something to that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure, I can show. Yeah, I can look at it. Yeah.
Как он говорит по-русски, стесняется.
Не, ну главный язык общения
This
английский.
is whether I speak Russian or not. Sorry, is the
A
question.
little bit.
I understand.
А он
Yeah.
понимает русский.
Lloyd, can I ask
Чешский, кстати, тоже неплохо.
which the most often problems why all the startups just fail because of money or because of team, like
Какая главная проблема, почему стартап прогорает?
Okay, so I think it's very tempting for someone like me to say that they failed because of something that they did or didn't do, right?
Я как бы не могу сказать, что вот они что-то не сделали, что-то сделали плохо, да?
I don't think that's actually true. I think most startups fail because the time isn't right. Right?
Я думаю, что большая часть стартапов прогорает, потому что пришли не в то время.
I mean, often, like, look, the time can be right, and you cannot be successful because you didn't work hard enough, or you didn't know something, or you didn't listen to good advice. That can happen, right? But I would say of all the startups that fail, 99% fail only because the time just isn't right. It's too late, it's too early, right? Someone else did it, or it's not, the world isn't ready yet, right? So most of the time, it's just that, right? The rest of the time, it's it's a combination of problems, right? Didn't have the right access to money, didn't have the right team, didn't have the right founder, whatever it is, right? So it can really be anything. I don't like to say it's one thing. Right? Because then I could say, oh well, the only problem is they didn't think about my advice. The thinking was a problem. It's not like that, right? They fail for reasons that are not in their control. Right?
Yeah, thank you very much. Сейчас Женю надо, давайте отпустим уже Ллойда. Он на все мейлы отвечает, он все пишет, он вообще молодец и ко всем коммуникациям, на всех языках пытается говорить.
Спасибо.